Welcome to Shootin' Straight. I'm your host, Ken Buck. In today's highly partisan environment, political adversaries often minimize each other's arguments by labeling motives rather than engaging in constructive dialogue. For the next 30 minutes or so, I invite you to join me as we learn about Senator Rick Santorum and his passion for being a voice for the voiceless. We will learn about his presidential runs, his time in Congress, and how he has integrated faith in politics. It is my pleasure to welcome Rick Santorum to the show. Are you ready to start shooting straight?
I'm ready, Ken. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to you.
Well, it's great to have you here. And
Thank you.
So when I think of Rick Santorum, I remember a speech that you gave in Colorado, and I remember the presidential run and how you won the state of Colorado. But the thing that really I identify with your time in public service is the life issue and your passion for life and making sure that that we celebrate life at all stages of life. Where did that come from?
Well, it doesn't come from one place. It comes from a combination of places. I think primarily faith. I mean, my faith and what I know to be true, that my faith teaches. And to be honest with you, I became pro-life because of my father-in-law, who is a physician, who showed me the science. And so it's not just a matter of article of faith, it's an article of fact that is a human life. So it came from science, it came from faith, it came from my family and my upbringing. I mean, all those things sort of came together to convict me, and then of the position, and then more importantly, convict me to take leadership on it.
So you mentioned your family. You're raised in West Virginia and Pennsylvania.
Right.
You run for the state legislature in Pennsylvania.
I worked in the state legislature. I never ran.
Oh, okay.
I worked as a chief of staff for a state senator, and then got a law degree and went back to my area where I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I lived in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, and then moved up to Western Pennsylvania, not too far away, and grew up in that area. And when I worked in Harrisburg for a state senator, and then after law school went back to Western Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area, and practiced law, and decided to run for Congress
at an early age.
Yeah, I decided when I was 30 that I was going to run for Congress. I got elected in one of these impossible races against a 7-term incumbent, and who had never gotten less than 60% of the vote, in a bad year where Republicans actually lost seats in the legislature. In the Congress. But I pulled off a sort of a miraculous victory. I spent a little over $200,000, and I won my congressional seat. And but I knocked on a bunch of doors and sort of was the accidental winner of that, and came to Congress and formed a group that you might have heard of called the Gang of Seven, with a guy named John Boehner and Jim Nussle and several other, 4 other guys, and we sort of made our claim to fame because we took on the House banking scandal, where every members were able to write checks, and basically borrow money from the government in their House bank accounts, and then there was the post office scandal, which wrapped up the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, a guy named Danny Rostenkowski, and so John Boehner and I were sort of the head honchos of that thing, and we sort of cleaned up Congress, and I think set the precedent, set the stage from 1991 through 93 for the victory in 94. I don't think, but for the congressional scandals that we uncovered, and frankly, it encompassed both Republicans and Democrats. We lost a lot of Republicans through that scandal too, who were complicit. But the Democrats were running the show, and they took the bigger hit, and I think that was one of the principal reasons, not just the contract with America, but that we were able to win Congress for the first time in 40 years.
So let's back up. I want to talk about your wife,
yeah.
Karen, and were you married at that point?
Karen and I met when I was a lawyer, and I recruited her to be a summer associate at our firm, and so I recruited her very, very well. And we got married about 6 months before the election in November, and started a family immediately. We got pregnant in August, and then I got elected in November. So it was 1990 was quite a whirlwind year for me.
How would you describe your faith at that point?
It was sort of there. I was a check the box Christian. I'm Catholic, so did I go to Mass on Sunday? Check. Did I believe in the Trinity? Check. I mean, I could sort of go through and check the box, but I would say that, faith was a part of my life, like, playing golf was a part of my life, and going to school board meetings or something. It's sort of something you did because, well, that's what you do. But it wasn't at the center of my life. It wasn't who I was. It wasn't what I was living for, and that process took a little while, and in fact took getting elected to the United States Senate. I was a very young. I got elected when I was 32 to the House. I got reelected in a new district that they tried to eliminate me. Pennsylvania lost a congressional district, probably to Colorado, and they eliminated my seat. They took my seat and put it into 3 different seats, and put me in with a 30-year incumbent Democrat in a 70% Democrat registered district. I was given no chance of winning, but again, George Bush was running for re-election, as you know, didn't do well, lost Pennsylvania, lost my district, got 29% in my district, and I got 62. And it was just one of those things that, we happened to be at the right place at the right time and fighting for the issues like, scandal, and which the Gang of Seven played well in my blue-collar steelworker district. And then I decided to run for the United States Senate. And after I got elected to the Senate, I beat another incumbent for the Senate, a Democratic incumbent. And, here I am, 36 years old. I'm in the United States Senate, and, I'm married. I've got, 3 children at that point, and I got 6 years. I don't have to run for anything.
So what do you do?
It's sort of one of those things. I'll never forget 2 things I always talk about happening. One was, I don't know if you remember Don Nichols. Don was the Republican whip at the time, and
Oklahoma?
And from Oklahoma. And he got elected as a young man, too. And he'd been there for a few years. He got elected in the Reagan landslide in 80. And here we are in 1994. And Don came up to me one day. We're just walking down the hall. And he puts his arm around me. He says, would you be interested in coming to a Bible study? And I thought, yeah, maybe okay. Because I was sort of thinking, why am I here? I mean, I know you think, well, you have all these, and I had things to do. I mean, I was involved with welfare reform. I mean, I did a lot. I was involved in a lot of things, but I'm thinking, sort of bigger picture. How does a guy like me, who no money, no fame, no nothing, and, father was an immigrant to this country, and here I am at age 36, knocking over 3 incumbents, and I'm in the United States Senate, and there's something bigger going on here.
But why do you ask that question? Because I'm surrounded by people now in the House who are sure that the reason they're in the House is because of them.
Yeah.
And yet you asked a really important question in your life.
And I give my parents a lot of credit for that. Just, I always say, and I say this to parents all the time, plant the seeds. That, you may not see them blossom while their kids are at home or even after they leave, but if you plant those seeds and if you set the example of understanding how you fit in the universe, and you're not the sun and the planets aren't orbiting around you, that you're probably some distant moon out there somewhere, and you have to understand that there are bigger things going on in this world than you, and that you are here to know, love, and serve the Lord. I mean, that was something that was always pounded in me, and yet I didn't do it for a big part of my life, and up until I came to the United States Senate. But it as I sort of had time to breathe and sort of think, those things started coming back. Those lessons, they get pounded into you as a child. So parents, don't give up. That's my first lesson. Don't give up on your kids, and speak the truth to them, love them, and even though they may reject you, they may turn away, they may disappoint you, if you just continually are there for them, that's gonna pay off. And it did for me. That seed. I'm glad you asked me that question. I never really thought about it before. No one's ever asked me that. So thank you. I think that's why, because of what my parents sort of gave me, the gift they gave me of my faith. And once, I went to Bible study, and the head of the Bible study was the chaplain of the Senate, a guy named Lloyd Ogilvie. I don't know if he was the chaplain of the Senate. It was just a great preacher. He was a Presbyterian minister, and I always say Lloyd was a Scotsman. He had this just resonant voice. I always thought, that's what the voice of God must sound like. This guy. It was just an incredible voice. And then, we moved. Karen and I moved to suburban Virginia, And we found a Catholic church there, and I found a pastor who was just on fire and just, could really preach the gospel. And so those sort of things, all of a sudden, my faith just started, and so with Karen, we just started to really grow in our faith. And so I'd say that sort of, the Rick Santorum you see today was not the Rick Santorum who got elected to the House and Senate the first time. He's a different person in some respects. And
so your faith grows.
Yeah.
And then there are abortion issues being debated in the Senate.
Yeah.
How does one relate to the other?
Yeah. So when I was in the House, I represented 2 very tough congressional districts for a Republican to get elected. And so I never said the word abortion. I never talked about it. I voted pro-life. I was 100% pro-life voting record, but I never really talked about it. And when I came to the Senate, I campaigned. I never talked about abortion unless I was in a pro-life group, then you did. But I was your typical Republican who mouths the word, says what, votes the right way, and then hopes he never has to, or she never has to talk about it. Because one of the things I realized is when you take leadership on the abortion issue, you can be a conservative, you can be a pro-life conservative, but the media sort of treats you badly. I mean, they treat all conservatives badly. But if you lead on moral and cultural issues, then you're an extremist, right? Because now you've separated yourself out, and you're taking on the orthodoxy. You're taking on their religion. Because I believe abortion is really a part of their religion, their secular religion, and so when you take on someone's religious beliefs, then they're gonna hit harder than if you just sort of quietly go along and vote the right way and lose, because they don't mind losers who believe certain things because they're not a threat. But if you're someone who wants to change things, you want to actually change the law, you want to actually push back on this and win, then they come after you.
So there's 2 things that come together in the Senate for you at the same time. Your wife is pregnant.
Yeah.
And you are managing a late-term abortion bill.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah. So how did I end up managing a late-term abortion bill? I had this growth in faith, right? One of the things I learned from this is God speaks in whispers, and the closer you are to Him, the more you hear what He wants from your life. Now that, to me, turned out to be a very scary thing. And I think there was a reason I stayed away, because I didn't want to hear what He had to say. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so when I got close and He started telling me what He wanted me to do, I didn't want to do it. But sometimes He sort of forces your hand. So a guy named Bob Smith, who was a senator from New Hampshire, was the manager of the partial birth abortion bill. It passed. He was the manager of the bill. It was his bill, and President Clinton vetoed it. The House overrode the president's veto. It's the only, I can't think of any time in the last 50 years where a veto was overridden, but it happened in the House of Representatives. They overrode the veto, and it came to the Senate. And Bob was up for re-election in 1996. That was the year it happened, and this was September, the override vote, and he was up in November. And so he basically announced to the caucus he's not managing the bill. He couldn't do it and run for re-election in New Hampshire. And imagine, everybody lined up and said, who wants to step forward? And everybody took a step back, and there I was. But I did feel like it was sort of I felt called to do it, even though I'd never talked about abortion before. I went from never talking about it to managing the most high-profile abortion bill in 40 or 50 years. And it was front page news of every newspaper. It was overriding the president's veto on an abortion issue. It was in many respects the defining issue of defining time of my life, because you say, I think of Rick Santorum as a pro-life leader. That's why, because for the first time we actually had a debate about what life was. We actually got down to the reality that life is, that abortion is taking a human life. We had because that was the debate, whether you could kill a child shortly before it was going to be born. In fact, it was in the process of being born. The baby was all outside of the mother's womb except for the head, and that's when the baby was killed. And so this horrific procedure brought the reality of what abortion is all about. And it was raw. It was I can't remember a time when the country was so engaged and involved in the reality of this issue. And I was just blessed to be in a position to communicate that to the public. And you mentioned at the same time, Karen, we were pregnant with our fourth child. And I'll never forget Senator Feinstein and Senator Clinton, two names that are still well known to people today, got up and talked about how we had to keep this late-term abortion procedure legal, because times late in pregnancy, a mother will find out that the child they're expecting isn't what they were expecting, that the child had some sort of birth defect. And therefore, we needed to be able to kill that child because the mother didn't want that deformed child. That shocked me, that people go up and talk about Americans for Disabilities Act and talk about how we want to help all these people who are sick and need health care and all this stuff. And yet, if a child is sick in the womb, we want to keep a procedure around so we can kill it. And I got up and talked about how at the time my wife was 20 weeks pregnant with our son, and I said, we have a sonogram. I'm quoting from the record. I said, we have a sonogram in a few days, and I have no idea whether my son's healthy or not, but it's my son. It's like, I don't care whether he's 20 weeks in the womb or 20 weeks old. If I got a diagnosis when he was 20 weeks old that there was something wrong with him, would I kill him? No, I would do everything I could to treat him. He's no less my son now than he is 40 weeks from now. And then it turned out that a few days later, we lost the vote by 3 or 4 votes on the override. So we got, 64 or 63 votes, which, given the fact we got 10 or 12 Democratic votes to override the president's veto. And then a few days later, we had the sonogram, and I'll never forget the sonographer looking at it and kept going to this one area. And he finally turned to us and said, "Your son has a fatal defect and is going to die." And my reaction was shock. I had my 3 little kids were there because we thought this was going to be this joyful little thing. And, Karen starts crying. The kids are crying. I mean, it's just like, it's a mess. And so I get everybody packed up. We get out of there as fast as we can. We get in the car. We start driving. I couldn't drive anymore. I had to pull off the road. Finally just sort of hit me. Now I'm out of crisis just getting kids together to realizing what this doctor had said. And I said, I'm going to fight. I'm going to try to save this child's life. And we tried. We had intrauterine surgery, but 3 days later, after the surgery, Karen had an infection, and the baby was delivered, and little Gabriel lived for 2 hours and died very peacefully in our arms. And you want to talk about, everyone says, you're pro-life until the rubber hits the road. Well, the rubber hit the road, and I have absolutely no regrets, none. I mean,
you're pro-life until the sonogram.
Till the sonogram, and I had 2 hours with my son, and that's all he was meant to live. But I realized that he lived for 2 hours, and for 2 hours, his entire life, he knew nothing but love. Not a bad life.
And you go back to the Senate at some point, and you're involved in your faith in the Senate, and you became a leader really in the Senate during those the number of last years that you served in the Senate.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I got involved in in a lot of other issues that were let's say hot button issues. I was the lead sponsor and floor manager on welfare reform. Again, I found that really driven by my faith too, to help those who are hurting in our society, to give them the opportunity to achieve financial success, to build family stability. I mean, I wrote a book in 2004 called "It Takes a Family," and talked about how Republicans needed to focus more on family policy, that you can't have limited government if families are broken, and because broken families require a lot more government. When you have stable 2-parent homes, you don't need the intervention that comes from not having stable 2-parent homes. And You don't have the community stability. I mean, you go into the poorest communities in America, what do you find? You don't find dads. They don't exist. I always told my economic conservative friends, my libertarian friends who don't seem to care about the institution of marriage or the sanctity of life or the importance of nurturing stable families and discouraging divorce and doing all the things that create stability. That you can't have limited government with unlimited out of wedlock births and unlimited forms of families. That we need to encourage that. So I took leadership on all these very controversial issues, but at the same time, I was elected leader in the Senate because one of the things I have a gift for. I have a passion for a lot of things, and so I got involved with a lot of issues, from national security to foreign policy to a lot of things. But having said that, again, going back to the media, the thing that media likes to focus on is their religion. And so I was ultimately always defined by the work that I did on moral and cultural issues.
But you also helped lead a group of senators who were interested in a lot of those issues, but not necessarily in their faith. When your faith grew, you started a Bible study. You led senators to daily mass. You did things that sort of help people go down the road that you've just been down.
Yeah, I think I look at it more as I don't think I hate to say I led people, because I'm not sure that's the right word. I was a witness.
Facilitated?
Well, I think I was just a witness. I mean, I just lived my life very publicly and very openly, and just like Don Nicholas coming up to me and slapping me on the back, how much an impact that had in my life. And had he not just been a witness and said, hey, this is what I do, you might want to think about doing this. And it changed my life. And so I always think about, well, I'm going to do the same for everybody else. I'm not that I'm going to say, hey, this is what you should do. That's not that's not the way to encourage people, in my opinion. But just say, here's what I do, and here's how it helps me, and here's why it's important to me. And I remember we called our accountability group. It ranged, I think, throughout the 7 or 8 years that we did it. We would meet right before our lunches. We have the Tuesday lunch, the Wednesday lunch, the Thursday lunch, and we have lunches in the Senate. We would take a half an hour or maybe a little longer before those lunches, meet at the chapel. Most people don't know there's a chapel behind the rotunda right outside the speaker's office. You have to go to the speaker's office to get a key because it's locked. Why they locked the chapel, I have no idea, but they did.
It has a code now.
Oh, it has a code?
Yeah.
Okay, well, back then you had to get a key. And so we would go there and we'd meet and we'd sit and we'd be accountable. We wouldn't talk about policy. We wouldn't talk about bills, nothing. We would talk about, what's going on with your wife, what's going on with your family, what's going on with, your kids, what's going on with you, how's your walk, what's your journey, it was we always called it the best half hour of the week. And it just, I think, helped us, stay on track. And so that was a blessing for us.
You ran for re-election in the Senate unsuccessly.
I got re-elected in 2000. Very proud of the fact that I was the only conservative to win in a state that George Bush lost. He lost Pennsylvania, but we won. And then in 2006, those who remember 2006, I think we lost 5 or 6 Senate seats. We lost the House. We lost this. We lost everything in 2006. That was midterm Bush the last time, and it was a bloodbath, and I got swept out in the bloodbath.
In 2008, you and Karen are pregnant again.
Yeah.
You had a daughter born, Bella. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was, let's just say, a surprise because our youngest at that point was, I think 8. We had 6 children, and then this 7 or 8 year gap, and then we found out we were pregnant, and we were, I was 50 years old when Bella was born, and so it was a bit of a shock to us, but we were overjoyed, and we found out, just like with our son Gabriel, that there were some issues. Had her deliver early because of some of these issues. And when she was born, they finally did a genetic testing on it. We never did anything in utero, so we found out she had a condition called trisomy 18, which is a death sentence according to the medical literature, that 90% of kids with trisomy 18 die at or before birth. Of the 10% that survive, which she was one of, 90% die within the first few weeks and months. So, it's like a 1% survival rate or less over time. And so we were given a death sentence. We're sitting there celebrating her birth, and she was only a little over 3 pounds. But she was hanging in there. She was in the neonatal intensive care unit, but she was hanging in there. But they said, there's really nothing we can do. And so after 10 days, they sent us home on hospice. And told us just to prepare for the end. And so my role was, having done this before with the loss of Gabriel, was to just sort of hold everybody together, because it was a very painful time and a very trying time, particularly obviously for my wife. But Karen was not having any of it. She was, we're gonna save this child. I mean, we're gonna do everything we can. And so we got
and Karen's a nurse.
Karen's a nurse, yeah. And she just focused on just one day at a time, just taking care of her one day at a time. We, after we got home, we started celebrating her birthday every week. And then we got to the first month, and we were bold enough to start doing monthly birthdays. And our hope was that she would live as many months as someone would in a lifetime in years, and that would be a real victory for us. And so it was that type of just taking every day as a gift. And it was a struggle, but it's a blessing too, because if you think about it, how many people take every day? I mean, just prize every day and realize that could be the last you have with this child, and value it. So it helped us. It really did. It helped us have a perspective on, the gift that life is. And things went well for a few months, and then she got a cold. And they told us that if she got a cold, that would probably be the end, because she has respiratory distress issues. And they were right. She got a cold, and she stopped breathing. Her heart stopped. And I was a mess. I was holding her, and she stopped breathing. And so Karen came up and did what the nurse does, not what the politician does. Politician tries to talk her into breathing, and my wife actually got her to breathe. We called 911. The EMTs, God bless them, they came and they did a great job, and we took her to the hospital. And because I had lost our son Gabriel and had gone through that incredibly painful experience, I honestly, I treated her differently. I loved her, but I didn't go all in. I was sort of expecting her to die, and so I was just sort of, my heart was prepared for death. I mean, yes, I took care of her, I did all the things but I wasn't all in. And then she's now gone, right there, I'm not breathing, and I just hit me, crashed, gosh, she's gone, and you never really committed to her. And I remember we were at the emergency room, and they're working on her, trying to intubate her to get her more efficiently to breathe, and she's just hanging on by a thread. And we were sitting there because she's so tiny. She's 5-6 pounds at that point, and she had her arm out because it was on a board with the IVs in it, and I put my little pinky in her little hand, and she squeezed it. And I just said a prayer, and I just said, here's the deal, God. You pull her through this, and I'm in. And it was all the difference. I mean, it's not been easy. We went through a lot of tough times. But she's, all the kids say she's the favorite of all the kids, and none of them are jealous because of it, because she's the favorite of all of them too. So she's the center of our life, and she's a great blessing to us.
And how old is she now?
She's 13.
That is a blessing.
She is amazing. I mean, Bella doesn't walk. She doesn't talk. She is fed by a G-tube. In the eyes of the world, she's completely disabled. She can do nothing for herself. I say that the only thing Bella can do is that she can love. And, you walk into the room and she sees you and she just lights up and she's just so excited to see you. And she'll snuggle with you. And I remember sitting, leaning over the crib and contemplating that here I am, I'm an older dad, and I realized that she'll never be able to do anything for me. She'll never bring me soup if I'm sick. She'll never be able to comfort me. She'll just all she can do is just love. Otherwise, she is completely disabled. And I realized that that's how the Lord looks at us. In his eyes, we're completely disabled. We can do nothing for him. There's nothing he needs except our love. I always call Bella my teacher. She teaches me about what's really important. Talk about Bella, I mean, there are countries, socialized medicine countries in the world, where children like Bella do not receive treatment. They are written off as not worthy, that because they'll never have any economic benefit, and so they just are not given treatment. And so here I am with this disabled child who, we had to fight. Even in America, we had to fight for treatment for her, because people would say, why bother? We got that from a lot of doctors. Why are you bothering? I mean, she's going to die. It's just let her go. Let her go. We heard that many, many times. And then Obamacare happens. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, we're moving toward socialized medicine. We're moving toward government medicine, putting more and more people in government programs and centralizing more and more care. And instead of you being the focus of your health insurance, it's now the government's budget is the focus of the health insurance, like they have in Canada and Britain, so many other places. And so that actually motivated me, that, Bella's story, if you will, Bella's cause, motivated me to run for president. And now think about it. I mean, I just lost my race in 2006. And so now this is 2010. So it's, 4 years later. I'd lost my race by the largest amount of any incumbent Republican in 30 years. Any incumbent senator in 30 years. I lost by 18 points. I mean, I got trounced. And so 4 years later, I decided I'm going to run for president. Now, that's not a logical step, right? I mean, and yet that's, again, you sort of get close and you hear the whispers, and I'm not, God doesn't talk to me, but you feel this is what you're called to do. So I just, went out there and just started delivering my message, and people started listening, and I didn't need much encouragement, because I'm not someone who necessarily goes for whatever's popular out there, but I got enough encouragement. I always say that my entire family, only one person wanted me to run, and that was at the time, she was my 12-year-old daughter, Sarah Maria, wanted me to run, but 6 months into the run, she recanted. So
you're on your own.
I was on my own. So yeah, it was a tough journey.
2012 race, a little bit. You won Colorado, and that was a big deal.
It was a huge deal.
You won a number of states and did really well. And Mitt Romney eventually got the nomination. But you learn a lot of lessons about what Republicans should be talking about, and really the target audience of the blue-collar worker. And you wrote a book about it. And somebody read that book, and you met with them. And I'd love to have you tell us that story.
Yeah, I mean, I ran my 2012 race. Contrary, again, the media wanted to talk about Rick Santorum, the pro-life warrior, and all those things, and that there was social conservatism. I want to talk about marriage and things like that. But what I did talk about when I was actually out there, and the press again didn't report it, but this is what I actually talked about, was I talked about manufacturing. I talked about construction. I talked about blue-collar workers, and that how both political parties had abandoned them. The Democrats have gone to climate change and all these progressive policies that were leaving blue collar workers in the oil and gas and coal business and construction and all these great paying jobs, manufacturing, that were being left because of the altar of progressive policies that were farming these jobs to overseas. And Republicans, I mean, with all due respect, all Republicans talk about is growth. Well, growth is great. There's a title in my book, a chapter in my book that says, "A rising tide lifts all boats, unless your boat has a hole in it." And if your boat has a hole in it, you're someone with a drug problem. You're someone with, not education. You come from a broken family. You might have some mental health issues. Whatever it is, you may have PTSD as a veteran. If your boat has a hole in it and the tide starts to rise, that's a scary time, not a fun time, because that means you got to bail your boat faster and you can sink and die. And you look around and everybody else is doing better and you're not. So on so many levels, what Republicans were preaching just didn't connect to the person with a hole in their boat. And let's face it, most Americans have holes in their boats. We all have holes in our boats in many respects. And I just thought it was important to talk about, vocational education, to talk about manufacturing, to talk to people where they are. And I looked at the electoral map. There's a practical politician inside of all this. And I realized that, unfortunately, states like Colorado, New Mexico, and New Hampshire, which Republicans used to win, weren't as winnable as they used to be. But states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Iowa and Minnesota were. And so that's where those blue-collar workers who have been left behind by both political parties were, and they were particularly left behind by Barack Obama, and they knew it. And that's what I went after. And when so I wrote this book. The quick story, I know we're probably running out of time here, but a quick story. I wrote the book. I was on a radio station in New York talking about it, and I got a call from Trump's office saying he heard me on the radio and wanted to talk to me. So a month or so later, I went by his office, and I walk into his office, and he's sitting behind his desk, and he's holding a copy of my book, Blue Collar Conservatives. And he said, "I read your book." And I said, "Yeah, you didn't read my book." He said, No, I read your book." I said, "Yeah, the hell you read my book." He said, "No, it's a great book." He says, "This is exactly what we should be running on." And he starts talking about what I said in the book about manufacturing and construction and trade and energy and all of these things, China, immigration, all of these issues. We spent a half an hour talking about all these things. And he said, "I'm thinking about running for president." And I said, "Yeah, sure, you're going to run for president. Yeah, Donald Trump's going to run for president." I said, "You've been running for president for 20 years. No, this time I'm really serious about it." I said, yeah. And then he went on for the next half hour and told me how his plane was better than Air Force One, how his house was better than the White House, and all this stuff. Typical Trump stuff. But you know what? What Donald Trump did, and I give him all the credit for this, is he was able to take that message directly to the voter, get around the media, and talk directly to the voter, and it connected. I believe that's the future of the Republican Party, is that we need to be the party of values. We need to be the party of family values and the American worker, and making sure that the rising tide lifts all boats, not just ones who are the big yachts.
So when you look back on it, I mean, you've just told an amazing story about your faith, your work, and your family. When you look back on all of that, what's the lesson that you want our viewers to understand?
First off, America is a great country. My father came to this country. He didn't speak English. He was 7 years old. His father was a coal miner, worked 50 years in the mines, died, black lung. And my dad, the only reason my dad ever went to college is because of World War II. He got the GI Bill. Otherwise, he'd have probably been a coal miner too. And he worked for the Veterans Administration all his life. He was a drug and alcohol counselor. And so any idea that America isn't the greatest country in the world, or that the values that this country stands for are not worth fighting for and defending, that's just a bunch of baloney. I mean, this is a great country, and hope and optimism should be the order of the day for conservatives, not, oh, woe is me and how bad things are. They're bad because we just don't fight for what we believe in as hard as the other side does. And so I would just say, the great. If you look at my story, it's a typical American story. Is someone who who is motivated by their faith, and that's a great percentage of Americans are motivated by their faith, and to serve God and their country. And we need just more of that. I mean, the other side serves their God and their country too, but it's a different God and country these days. It's not. I always used to think Democrats and Republicans wanted the same thing. They just had different ways of getting there. I don't think that's the case anymore. I just hate to say it, but I don't. They have a fundamentally different understanding of what America is. They want it to be. You heard Barack Obama say, "We want to transform America." Well, they are, and you may think that's a good thing. Fine, then continue to fight for it if that's what you believe. But if you believe that this is the greatest country in the world because of the values this country held to make it great, then those values just don't stick around on their own. Every civilization falls because people forget what's important and stop fighting for it. And so my message is, even if you lose by 18 points, keep fighting. You just never know the impact you're going to make. And I lost. I ran again. I lost. But that book, I think, had an impact and helped change the country. So, Mother Teresa said, God does not call on you to be successful. He calls on you to be faithful. And one of the things I learned from all the losses I've had in my life, they weren't losses. They were just victories in a way that I didn't expect. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that if you do the right thing and just focus on doing the right thing, let him take care of who gets the points on the board. It may not be you, but that doesn't matter. This is a team sport. And we just have to continue to focus on doing the right thing and fighting hard for them.
I ask a question for all my guests. If loving this is wrong, I don't want to be right. What is this?
Well, okay, I'll just tell you this morning what I did. Took care of my bees. I don't wear the whole bee suit. I just wear the hat because I don't want to sting my face. But I've gotten stung enough. It doesn't bother me much anymore. But it's a nice little quiet time for me and nature.
I want to thank Rick Santorum for shooting straight with us, and I want to thank you for listening today. I hope this program has been informative, enlightening, and uniting. As Americans struggle with the difficult issues facing our country, we are reminded that good policy is a result of open, thoughtful discussion. For more straight shooting programs, go to my website, shootingstraightpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this show and have ideas about future topics or guests, shoot me an email, ken@shootingstraightpodcast.com. God bless you, and remember to always shoot straight.